So what's your podcast about?
Superheroes.
It's a little geeky, but I think you guys are gonna like it.
Try not to be too geeky.
No, I can't promise that.
Should we begin?
It's a bird. It's a plane. It's the Geek and You Shall Find podcast. And now, your hosts, Kelsey Dickerson, Brad Fay, Kate Fay, and Noah Berlin.
Listen to me now.
Welcome to Geek and You Shall Find, the podcast powered by Superhero Faces. We're going to get the spoiler alerts out of the way nice and early because we are going into House of the Dragon, episode 3, the second of his name. I'm Kelsey Dickerson, your host today, joined by Brad Fay, Kate Fay, and Noah Berlin. Thank you guys so much for tuning in with us. Now, if you just can't get enough of Geek and You Shall Find, we have good news for you because you can follow us at Superhero Faces on Facebook and Twitter, as well as at superhero_faces on Instagram. And of course, you can watch us each week on YouTube, or you can follow along with our podcast on most of your favorite streaming services, including Spotify. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. You know, at first we thought this was going to be a special episode where we were just going to dive into House of the Dragon for the first episode, but it's got us hooked. So we are doing it each week or as many weeks as we can because we can't get enough Game of Thrones. And with that, I'm going to throw it to you, Noah. Can you please help us set the stage on where we're at in episode 3?
Sure. So House of the Dragon episode 3, as you just said, was titled Second of His Name, and it took place at least 3 years after episode 2. It opens with an already 2-year-old Prince Aegon II, and now Queen Alicent is pregnant again with another royal child. But for this segment, I want to instead talk about another house that didn't appear during the events of Game of Thrones, but that features prominently both in this episode and in this series. So House of Velaryon, they descend from old Valyria, just like the Targaryens, but instead of being a family of dragon lords, they excelled at the sea instead. The Velaryons escaped the doom of Valyria as well, but they actually arrived in Westeros before the Targaryens did, and they settled on Driftmark, which is a neighboring island to Dragonstone, right next door to Dragonstone. So after the Targaryens arrived with their dragons in Westeros, House Velaryon was a major ally in Aegon's conquest of Westeros. The two families' close relationship continued as the Targaryens married many Velaryons. A lot of marriage within these two families because of the desire to keep the Valyrian blood pure. So which is a big thing with keeping pure blood, and they talk about it in episode 2 when Corlys Velaryon is telling the king, you should marry my daughter and you know, join our two houses and keep that blood pure. It leads to the white hair that you see. The Velaryons and the Targaryens both have the white hair, as well as some other, let's say, shared talents that we saw in this episode. Won't spoil that yet. So Corlys Velaryon, he's known as the Sea Snake, which is a pretty badass nickname if you ask me. He sits the Driftwood throne as the Lord of the Tides and the Master of Driftmark, as well as being King Viserys' Master of Ships, and he is married to King Viserys' cousin Rhaenys, who's called the Queen That Never Was. So far this season, we've seen the Triarchy threaten the Stepstones, which are the chain of islands that dot the southern edge of the Narrow Sea, just kind of between Westeros and Essos. House Velaryon became the most wealthy house in the Seven Kingdoms because of their shipping business and because of being able to kind of control this whole area and all the shipping lanes there. So when the Crabfeeder and the Triarchy have come in there and causing chaos over there, they've become a major thorn in the side of the Sea Snake. So for now, House Velaryon allies with Prince Daemon. We saw that in the big battle for the Stepstones there in episode 3 here today. But when this larger civil war that the series is leading to finally arrives, I'm very interested to see what part this major house has to play there and who they in fact ally with in the wars to come.
Yeah, I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head. He has such a cool nickname, but not just one, too. Master of the Tides is actually a cool nickname as well. It's not even his main one. And we actually alluded to this in a few other podcasts or in the podcast leading up to this one as well, about how important the king's decision or lack of decision to support House Valyria is going to, or the Valyrian house.
Valyrion.
Thank you very much. We went through that over before the podcast. and I still can't get it right. We'll get it right by I'm sure season 3.
You think that George R. Martin would be a little less confusing, but he is not. He loves doing names that are so similar. So it's not just you, Kelsey.
Well, Noah, maybe that's why it's taking him so long, just for you, so that he can continue to confuse you. But he knows that you speak Valyrian now, so it's just really hard.
That maybe is it. He's not writing the damn books because he's thinking about all these names that he could come up with that sound exactly like other names that he's already come up with. Maybe that's it.
No, and we'll be touching on there was a lot of absolutely amazing scenes thanks to House Valerian, because obviously the Stepstones played a huge role in this episode. But before we get to that, Brad, I'm gonna throw it to you. We like to crown the most valuable players each episode. Do you have one? Is there anyone that maybe J.R.R. Noah has referred to?
I have for this week specifically Alicent as my MVP. I think her character just like, she's just so interesting because she could go either way and it wouldn't shock me if she ends up being, she's pure and genuine, or she ends up, she's playing the game better than anybody and maybe we're just not reading into it. But she had a couple moments that I really thought were strong this episode. I really liked her encouraging King Viserys to send aid and kind of doing it in that what's better for the realm, put egos aside. Let's not worry about power plays. Like in the grand scheme of things, what is better for more people? And that's kind of what gives him the little, push to send some troops. Also,
only taken 3 years.
She could have had that conversation a lot earlier, maybe, but I just really enjoy her character too. And at some point, we're going to talk about this, but having like a weaker king who always seems to be worried about everyone else's thoughts and is always like, well, what do you think about this? Do you think I did the right thing? And he's always super worried. It seems like she was the first person ever to be like, well, what do you think? What do you want to do? Like, so whether she's doing that strategically because no one else is doing it and she's really, trusting him a little bit more, or she genuinely is like, stop worrying about what everyone else thinks and do what the hell you want to do. You're the king. So I just thought, she really carried a few scenes in terms of, but also not being afraid to play that power play either, where, when she comes out and the singer's performing for an era, kind of being like, yo, your queen is telling you this, like, oh, okay, like, so they do a good job with that character, for her seeming to go back and forth between, I don't know what angle she's playing, if she's even playing an angle also. That's what I had for my MVP this week.
Yeah, they definitely grew her character more as like, she definitely dropped that queen hammer when it came down to it. So that is definitely a great insight into that. But I saw some pretty strong reactions from Kate and Noah when you said Queen Alicent was your MVP.
Yeah,
Kate, who was the MVP? Oh, sorry, say that again.
No, I said, go ahead, Kate. I want to know what she has to say here.
Okay, so my MVP for the week might be a little controversial, and I surprised even myself with this. Okay, so my MVP is actually Daemon. Dude is straight up crazy. He's crazy, but he gained my respect in this episode. His whole thing here is still kind of childish because he entered this whole war purely to spite his brother and make him mad and piss him off. So I don't think he really truly cares about like these people and winning the war in the Stepstones. But he really just wants to be the winner and prove like I can do this without your help. And that was pretty clear when he got the letter from the king saying he was going to actually be sending help after 3 years or whatever. He just lost it. He went nuts and decided to just go offer himself up and do a little surrender. And I gotta say that takes balls to put yourself out there and have 100 people just like attacking you and fighting the Crabfeeder, which is the scariest looking dude I've ever seen. So he gave my respect through that. So I appreciate Daemon in this episode.
I think he in the beginning, you're right, he just wanted to get a rise out of his brother and kind of just piss him off, and he's being childish, but I think he also does have at least a little bit of political savvy. And when House Valerion comes to him, Corlys comes to him and is like, this is how you prove yourself. This is how the people that think your brother is weak and not taking any action, you can show them the merit that you have. And so I think at that moment, he was like, all right, like this is an opportunity. And for 3 years, he's losing. You see it with a near mutiny within the ranks of the troops there. Everyone's basically sick of his shit. And so he sees when he gets that letter and he's like, oh yeah, my brother wants to come in and save the day. Fuck that. He's like, I'm not gonna be the loser, and then he's gonna come in, we'll win, and then he'll get all the credit and I just look like an idiot. Not a chance. So it kind of spurred him to take action there, and then the rest is history. But yeah, I mean, regardless, it was a badass move for him to do. Well, I will say that.
I had a question for you guys about that. Do you guys think he looked at that as like a suicide mission where like, yo, if I'm going to go out, this is it. I'm going to go out like a badass? Or is his ego, do you think he expected to succeed? Like, was that an ego thing of like, yo, I can do this and live?
I think it was.
Okay. So it wasn't like, yo, I'm willing to die for this right now.
No, fuck that. I think
he was just so wanted to prove to his brother, like, I'm fucking going out. I'm doing this. I don't even care if I die. Like, you will not send anybody to help me. Like, this is my thing. I'm going to do it. I'm going to kill all these guys, and whatever will happen will happen.
Well, I think he's a privileged dude who he grew up in wealth and power. He's never had consequences for his actions. He's always had, you know, the most training, the most like whatever. It reminded me of when Jon Snow goes to the wall and he's beating everyone's ass and they're like, well, what do you expect? Like, these guys are all poor and whatever. Like, you were trained by a master at arms, right? And so I think it is an ego thing where he just has never seen any consequences. He's never been really beaten at anything that he's tried to do. And so he's like, screw it, I'm going to go in, I'll save the day. And that's really what it was.
So I'm like really torn here because I agree. I think it starts off like very childish, and he literally takes the meaning of like, don't shoot the messenger to like, you know what I mean? He beats the shit out of the messenger, maybe kills him. We don't know.
Messenger's ass.
Yeah. And he knows that he's losing even with the dragon because they just can't infiltrate the crab king or the crab man, go literally being like a crab with his people and hiding in the rocks, which is what crabs do, which I think is actually very interesting. But he just goes, I think he truly was surrendering because when it's on the close up on his face, when he sees that people are coming and he sees the dragon being ridden, I don't think he planned that. Like, so I don't think that was actually a part of like this big thing. I think he was just going in, being a madman. And then the true strategic arms people, who is House Valyrian, they were like, okay, this is our time, because they needed some. They were actually talking about it before, being like, hey, we need someone to literally bait the crab guy. And he just goes and does it because it's pushed him over the edge. So, I mean, who knows? Like, I think it could really go either way. And
Wait, really? Hold on, Kelsey. So you think that wasn't an overall plan with everyone? You think he just went off by himself and was like, screw it, I'm just going to go in there, and he just got lucky that everyone else happened to show up?
It could go either way for me because the look on his face, like the look on his face is like, he doesn't like when he sees everyone coming and he sees a dragon, like it's not, he's like, yeah, he's like, oh shit. Like,
he might have went in there like, yo, I'm going to die doing this, but I'll show them I'm a badass who got things done. And then I think he got bailed out. Like, I think he went in there like, yo, I'm not going to survive this, but I'm going to go out fighting. Like, everyone's talking shit. At least I'm going to go down as like, you know, right now I have nothing to lose. Screw it. And then he got like lucky or whatever you want to say based on timing of, you know, so that's why I'm interested. That's why I asked, because it'll be interesting to see like where it goes playing forward. If he just got a second chance at life, like he just thought like, this is basically a suicide mission, and now he's going to be a totally new person. Kind of like the Jon Snow example is like a really good example of like kind of being reborn and being like, yo, I've got to go into the depths and come back out again and be a different person.
Kate, what do you think about this? Because I disagree with them, but I'm just wondering what your perception of this was.
I can actually, listening to both. I mean, I initially thought that this was a planned out thing, that they had decided that this was the plan. He was going to be the bait. Then they would go back him up once all of the sand people were out. They're not sand people. I don't know.
Like Star Wars, the Tusken Raiders.
The sand snakes.
I don't know what to call it.
Sand snakes.
The Crabfeeder. but I don't know. You guys make a good point. Like, I could also see him just being like psycho, and that letter just like completely sent him off. And I could see him just like throwing his little robot out there, like, I'm so freaking angry right now. Like, I'm just gonna go do this. Just like, it just seemed like he completely went off the deep end with that letter. So I could see him like not having this planned out and just being like, I'm just gonna go do this.
Yeah, to play off what you said, Noah, like, I think you talk about Jon Snow going to the wall and being humbled. I think him overhearing guys talk about mutiny and this guy can't lead, getting the letter from he looked like he was humble enough where that might have been a suicide mission in his eyes, and he was like, well, screw it, I'm gonna go out like a rider. And that's what he was kind of. I wouldn't be surprised if it was the other way and he thought, yeah, I could pull this off and live. But the way they were talking about, and they were like, yo, no one's gonna be insane to volunteer to be the person to ride in there to their certain death. And him doing it was like, I'll show all of you. I don't know if he expected to get out of there alive.
I don't necessarily buy that it was a cause he was willing to die for. Like, that's why I don't think that he went in with no plan. I don't think it was a
cause he was willing to die for. I think he just wanted to prove that he was was the best and was worth following. Like, not because he was like, I believe in this cause and the greater good, but just like, I'll show you guys that I'm a badass.
And I'd rather die than have my brother's help.
I mean, to be honest with you, I like this debate though. Like, this is cool because I definitely see your side too, and I really want to rewatch it already just so I can kind of start seeing maybe some of these nonverbal cues, like some of the facial expressions, things like that, and see if maybe I do switch and get on your side. I don't know. We'll see. I have another MVP that I wanted to mention. This one didn't get much time, but I have a feeling he's going to become a more important player in the episodes to come. That'd be Laenor Velaryon. And this would be the son of Corlys Velaryon. And this dude had two big moments in this episode. First, Lionel Strong, who we talked about last episode. He is the Master of Laws and one of the one of the members of the Small Council. He was the one that went to bat for Laenor, and he counseled the king to marry Rhaenyra to Laenor Velaryon and join the Velaryon and Targaryen houses. And he's basically like, I want you to do this for the exact same reasons I told you last episode, and you ignored that. So like, I still stand by that, which is true. That is what he should have done. So that's number one. And then secondly, I mean, the battle, what's his name? Daemon was a badass, but the battle wasn't in hand until the dragon came in. And at first I was like, hold on, is he riding Caraxes, which is Daemon's dragon? Like, how was he able to do that? But no, that is our third dragon that we've gotten to see so far in this series. That is Sea Smoke, which is a little bit smaller of a dragon. But because of that, it's more of a stealth guy. And apparently in the books, a lot of the stories about Sea Smoke, this dragon, is that he kind of is known for popping in, surprising people out of nowhere and just, whooping ass. So that's what he did here. And that's what ultimately won this battle for them.
Wow, I thought that was Daemon's dragon, and he didn't do it because the dragon knew that Daemon was in trouble. Like, they just I feel like they inherently have this connection with their
for sure. Rider. Yeah, no, that's the first thing I thought. But then I'm like, hold on, Daemon's dragon has this freakishly long neck. He just looks super weird with that neck, and he's red. And this one was like a dark gray type color.
A red one does come through though, right? I thought I saw a red one.
Not he's there early on. Early on, he's there, but not in this battle.
Oh, okay. Wait. Oh, sorry. Just really quick. So when Corlys says before, like, the reason that the Targaryens are able to really, be conquerors of the realm is because they have dragons, and because they're able to like conquer the dragons or whatever, like, do that. They have dragons too. They're just smaller.
No, they don't. But
they can ride. How is
this?
Sorry,
so this is some okay. So Targaryen bloods, like, so again, the Targaryens are dragon riders. It's in their family. It's in their blood. Mm-hmm. The Valyrians are not. However, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of kind of intermingling, I suppose, between these two families. And
so if you have more of the bloodline,
to be honest, I don't know, because the Valyrians are not supposed to be able to ride dragons, but obviously this guy, Laenor Velaryon, has this bond with the dragon Sea Smoke that is his dragon. And so I don't know if that's because of some, maybe in his
mom.
line. There's
he's
some
half
Targaryens
Targaryen.
there. Exactly. So I'm not exactly sure. But I mean, if you think about it, hold on a second. I'm realizing this. Corlys's wife is Rhaenys Targaryen.
Right.
So if it's just through his mom, I guess that might explain
Yeah.
why he's able to do that. So that does make more sense than I originally thought. So there you go.
Okay. I just assumed when Corlys said, I think in either, I can't remember, I think it's the second episode that he says like, the reason the Targaryens were able to take the Iron Throne is because they have dragons behind them, but clearly, okay. So later down, but then where did he get the dragon? Okay, whatever. I'm going to lay off this. Brad, what were you
Like they wouldn't have access to dragons except he married Rhaenys, who is a Targaryen.
So then that's how he
and
has
so now they have kids that are half Targaryen that I guess are able to wreck.
Well, why the hell wasn't he doing this dragon stuff before?
Well,
like, why didn't they have two dragons going in?
We didn't see it because I think the directors, the producers of this episode wanted to have this dramatic reveal, but they did say earlier in the episode, and I was wondering what they were talking about. They said, let's just keep sending the dragons. They mentioned that a couple times of sending the dragons, like multiple dragons. And I was thinking, isn't it just Daemon's? Like it didn't really like stick. I didn't remember that thought until then we see this one, but obviously they did have it.
Okay.
I'll admit only to you guys because it's just us in here. I had a really
safe space
moment of stupidity. For some reason, this is so embarrassing to admit. But when that dragon came in, and I knew right away it was a different dragon, but I thought it was King Viserys and was like, yo, how crazy would that be with his broken ass fingers? Like he comes through himself to save the day. I'm like, this would be like a game changer. Like everyone would change if he does it himself. Because we talked about, we don't know where his dragon is or if he has a dragon or if he's ridden a dragon since Valyria. I was like, yo, we could solve all of those questions like right now. And everyone would kind of change their viewpoints on him rolling in like that. And then I saw someone else on the dragon was like, of course it wasn't Viserys.
I don't think that's a dumb thing. I just think you maybe had too high of an opinion of what he's capable of.
Yeah. I was like, of course that guy's not riding the dragon, you fool. What were you thinking?
Going back, so this kind of ties in, it kind of goes back to it. Do you guys think that the message that the guy brought was actually from the king then?
Yes.
Yeah.
We think
they showed him like one.
They showed him writing it.
Yeah, it was that same dude that he told like deliver a message for me.
When is he writing it?
That he says, I have a message, deliver this to Daemon.
Okay. Because I was gonna say that could have played into my theory more of, hey, we need a goat out here to be able to just be bait, and then they make this fake. Maybe they got a real message from him saying like, hey, fuck off, I'm not going to send you anything. And then it ends up being like they redo it. But I guess it's really hard. I didn't see if he undid the seal or anything like that. But that was actually a very beautiful conversation about our MVP. So hopefully we have as much to say about our LVPs. But before that, I just have to say the pug was my MVP in this episode. That was
love that little guy.
And I love that his owner gets completely bodied by Princess Rhaenyra too, when she's like, your uncle fucked everything up and your dad's a mess and you're a mess and I don't like you guys. As her pug is just sitting in her lap and she's like, what have you done for the realm besides just eating cakes? And she just totally got slammed. So I love that. Beautiful. But Brad, we had a lot of MVPs right now and great cases for them. And Daemon has clearly shown light and favor in Catere's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
But was there any LVPs for you? I did see Noah busting at the seams with all your guys' MVPs. So that was great self-control, Noah. I'm proud of you.
Yeah. I'm interested in seeing who his LVP ends up being. I had for my LVP kind of sticking with the, Alicent theme, I guess, is my LVP was the fact that we had this time jump between 3 years passing for, as we were constantly reminded throughout the episode, because they don't think we would have figured it out on our own. There had to be numerous mentions to, he's 2 years old and already has a kingly presence. It's been 3 years and we get it. There's been a time jump.
She's
the kid
pregnant
is older.
again and she's like about to burst. That was like the worst pregnant, like fake pregnant belly, by the way. That's an LVP for me while you're talking about this.
So I could piece together that there's been a time jump, and for numerous, like obviously I get why there had to be a time jump due to story reasons, and we really don't seem to have lost out a lot. Like Rhaenyra is saying, I haven't talked to Daemon for 3 years. So a lot obviously probably hasn't happened in the past 3 years, but I feel the LVP was the fact that we don't get to see the maturation of the relationship between Viserys and Alicent. I just think it would have been cool to see how their relationship, I mean, last we go is him saying, I'm going to name her my wife. And now we're 3 years ahead. So, you know, I talked a little bit about the dynamics of their relationships. It seems that time there's genuine love between the two, but I think we're not privy to a lot of information right now to know how the last 3 years have played out, to know how much love they truly have for one another. So my LVP was kind of like not getting to see any of that development and literally jumping ahead to not only have they had one child, but now they're on their way to their second. So that was my MVP, is not getting to see their relationship develop.
I think that more than anything, it just shows you the impact of these stupid decisions that Viserys, the King Viserys, has had in every episode, and what that's done to alienate the people that he's the closest with, between his brother and his daughter. And to me, I don't really mind it. I mean, I think they have to be a little heavy-handed with telling us about this time jump, because that didn't ever happen in Game of Thrones. And when you're used to this, you're not used to seeing time move in the manner that it does in this series. And so they kind of, maybe that's just a thing early on. Maybe it's just a season 1 thing where they really have to kind of spell it out for the viewers. But it is different. But I don't necessarily mind it. With that specifically, yeah, I mean, you just see, again, the impact of what he's done to this relationship, where in the first one, he names her his heir and things are good. In episode 2, you see how he doesn't, or you see that, okay, sorry, go back. Episode 1, you see once his wife dies, he doesn't even know how to talk to his daughter. Like it takes a while for them to even have a conversation. And you see just his bumbling, his attitude towards his daughter. He has no idea how to have a conversation with her. And then he names her heir and things are good. And then he doesn't still take her really seriously. And he has her doing some other little minor things. And, and she's still not really feeling worthy, if you will. And now she's just, you see where this relationship has gone, where she feels like she's just a political pawn, basically. And she has no real value. And I don't know. I feel like I was fine seeing that. I know that I just said a lot of words for that. But I'm going to get a little more lighthearted LVP for my end. My LVP is Jason Lannister. The reason for that is because his name is Jason. This is fun. They're Viserys and Laenor and Lena and Kragas Drahar, like Jason, bro.
George
what?
mailed it in on that one.
What's his twin brother's name?
His brother's name was Thailand. So I mean,
you gotta think Jamie, like Jamie's a regular.
I know, but for some reason, Jason just seems like a very modern name. It just is weird. I don't know.
Like a manager at Best Buy.
Oh, your return is outside of the window of a normal return. You have to talk to Jason over there in customer service. But so what I did think was cool though about that is it shows that twins run in the family with Lannisters, which is cool. Obviously Jamie and Cersei are twins, Jason and Tylan are twins. That was pretty cool. But dude has a stupid name, and he was made to look stupid twice. First by Rhaenyra and then by King Viserys, both kind of roasted him a little bit. So anyway, he was my real LVP there.
That's funny. I hate that.
Jason from customer service.
Jason with his like stupid ass spear thing with like a big huge little frivolous thing, and then the king got so mad at him. He's like all drunk and he's like, "What are you saying to me right now?" Like he got so pissed at him. I loved it. He dunked on him, and to get dunked on by King Viserys is.
Whoa, yeah.
Yeah, but he's like, no, I'm sorry. It's not just me that's saying it. Everyone's saying. He's like, oh, motherfucker, everyone's saying it.
He's like, it is your duty to report rebellion. And he's like, nah. He thought he was so cool when he was trying to court a 17-year-old
He did.
Such a Jason thing to do.
That is such a you got Jake from State Farm and Jason from Lannisport.
Casterly Rock.
Yep. Who do you got, Kate?
Okay, so I had the Crabfeeder, which
a good one.
You said his real name, and I didn't write that down, but
Kragas Drahar.
Yeah, Kragas Drahar, yeah.
But I'm going to continue to call him the Crabfeeder.
Good.
So when he was very first introduced at the end of the first episode, and then shown again in the second one, I was kind of skeptical because I'm like, okay, you sick crabs on people? Like, I don't know. It just seems like kind of a weird MO, but okay, whatever. Like I'll give this guy the benefit of the doubt because he looks scary as fuck. So he's probably gonna do some crazy shit and kill people. Turns out he doesn't say one word, dies within 3 episodes, and has like 3 minutes of screen time total. And dies by getting cut in half by Daemon. So I just really wish that they did a little bit more with him. Like, I think he could have been like a really crazy, scary villain. And they just kind of, like, he was just there. He looked really scary.
He looked so gross.
Yeah. And then
it was hard to look at him.
The stringy hair, like, oh my God.
The crackly, yeah. I wonder though if his death or who he is going to play, like obviously he's dead and he's cut in half, but I wonder if it's going to play because they actually introduced, like they said his name in this episode. And then the guy in the beginning, when he's talking to him, he says something about like, you're going to pay for this, like, and says something about like his whore mother and bastard dad or something like that. So I wonder if he's someone of note that it's going to play into, and obviously he has followers, so people are like into this guy, even though
he's a prince from Mir. So Mir is one of the free cities in Assos, and so they have the triarchy, which is 3 different free cities that all come together to create this army, whatever, and he leads them. But I mean,
does it look like that? Do you know?
I'm assuming it looked like he was burned, and he wore that mask, and the mask looked so badass. It reminded me of a like Sons of the Harpy, like half of a Sons of the Harpy mask, how it had the little like thing on top, and he just looked so badass. I completely agree with you, Kate, because I mean, visually it was awesome. He was creepy. It was like a horror movie-esque, like the way he's just like, you know, a little twitchy and all that. And for him to, I mean, it sucked that he died after 3 episodes. But it sucked more that he died off screen like that. I think that was my least favorite part of the episode, where like he was such a cool presence, and he had no character development after that, and just he gets dragged out I mean, I don't know. I just really didn't like how he got killed off screen like that.
Especially because they showed Daemon being such a badass, like out of nowhere. Like we haven't seen him fight like this, and it's showing his development. That would have been cool to see him in the caves and them going literally hand to hand. Crabfeeder versus Daemon, like that would have actually been a really badass scene.
Yeah,
I'm disappointed that I no longer in my own head get to make Mankind, aka Mick Foley, jokes in my head every time I see him, because that dude literally reminded me of Mankind. The tick and the mask and seeing him from the back and his hair being all stringy.
Dude, what if they showed him fighting with Daemon and he put out a sock on his hand and started doing the mandible claw?
His brother Dude Love is gonna come in next week and really kick ass.
A hippie from across the narrow sea.
Shout out to all our WWE listeners.
Yeah, no doubt.
They're the only ones I know what that was.
This means nothing to me.
I wouldn't put it past The Rock though to like make an appearance in House of the Dragon, because he's in everything and he's gonna do like some big like, do you smell what the dragon is cooking?
We go from the Crabfeeder to the Scorpion King.
Oh,
that's very good.
Thank you.
Brad, you're on it tonight. This is a good one. You're crushing it right now.
Brad is in his element right now. It's like almost midnight, and he's like, he's just waking up for the day, you guys.
Game of Thrones WWE crossover. I mean,
love it.
Brad is the Crabfeeder of being up late. Before we transition to best scene, an LVP that I have, and I don't want to dwell on it too long, but the scene of the hart dying, of the elk dying, that was terrible. And just reminded me of canned hunting, which is also terrible. Please look up the positive effects of tourism versus hunting and poaching. But that shit was terrible to watch. I hated it, and it was so drawn out, and the noises, it was just
the noises were tough.
Awful.
The noises.
Like, kill and torture all the humans. I don't care. But do not kill animals, please.
Horrible. I mean, I told you, I mean, I think I've said this on a podcast before, but if not, I've literally cried on the way into work at 7 a.m. in the morning, the day after a dragon dies. So like, it wasn't on the level for that with me. But to your guys' point, you guys had Viserys as one of our LVPs, or did you? Or he was like kind
he's always on the listen. He's always
he's a continual LVP for us without it even being said.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I guess that's important to show the fragility and the frailty of him. You know, it's fast forwarded 3 years. I'm surprised he's only missing 2 fingers that we saw, not more. He can't even get on and off a horse without steps. Like, you know, he's getting drunk as fuck. So, you know, it's just, I think that was just an important scene to show that not only is Aegon not worthy of the White Hart, which I think we're going to be touching on later too, but, you know, maybe it goes to show that, hey, maybe I was right having Princess Rhaenyra as my heir and like all these things, but it was just a horrible scene for me.
I will say that King Viserys was never more relatable than he's been in this episode, because he just got hammered and made bad decisions. And I'm like, you know what? This is a character I can relate to.
Yeah. And he's talking about like, my teenage daughter is such a pain in the ass. And it's like, I was watching with my dad and he was like, I was like, okay.
Not talking about you, Kay. He was talking about your sister for sure.
Dave's like, I know a little something about that.
Noah's all happy about him drinking like a whole bottle of wine as like he's drinking his wine in his little house or Game of Thrones goblet.
Love it.
Oh man. All right. Well, not to dwell on a horrible scene, let's get right back into the positive with the best scenes that we thought for this week. We didn't think we were going to have a lot to talk about this episode, but it turns out we do. So let's start to you, Kate. What was a good scene for you? Let's erase all the animal slaughter out of your mind.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to talk too much about it because it's pretty much the same thing that I already talked about with Daemon at basically the last like, I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes of the episode, the battle on the beach where Daemon just goes ham on all of these guys. And then of course the dragon comes in, which is really, really cool because you knew that was going to happen, but I'm just like, okay, when's the dragon coming? So that was cool. And then the Crabfeeder's death was a little disappointing, as we talked about, but I mean, still, I guess, cool to see that they won the battle. So it was just a cool scene, like how they did it and how Daemon was such a badass.
It was, but you
Am
can't
I the
see
only
that
one
scene without it.
Would have got hype if Daemon would have just zigzagged at one point and be like, yes, someone knows to zigzag. They have that. Someone knows to zigzag. That's all I was waiting for, that whole scene. I was like, yo, they should just do a little nod and have him do a little cut or something. And we're like, thank you. People do know how to zigzag.
Dude, man, when I was watching that, all I could think about was Rickon and all the rain of arrows coming down. I'm like, he's really not going to get hit at all. He's just running straight ahead. Like, please zigzag. We've seen this already.
Dodge him.
I literally have that in my notes. I'm like, how the hell did he evade hundreds of arrows, but the Stark kid couldn't, and then couldn't evade 4, and then he all of a sudden gets hit with 3 in like 2 seconds. So I was just like, come on. There was hundreds, if not thousands, of arrows coming down on that beach. That was ridiculous. I know that we're in a fantastical world and this is all fake, but come on. And anyways, I couldn't get over that.
You know what's funny to me?
And it's great to see Daemon actually kicking ass.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
And it was cool when he did get shot. He's like tore him out like a beast. I was like, whoa, where is this coming from? Like he just needed to get real pissed off, I guess.
Yep. So I really liked the scene when the king was all hammered by that big bonfire and he was talking to Alicent, and it just showed kind of like the inner workings, like what's going on in his mind and like what's it tearing him up about the decisions he makes and what did he make the right decision? Did he make the wrong decision? He said, quote, what is the power of a dragon next to the power of prophecy? Because he talks about this dream he had about having a son who's going to be king and he's going to be a conqueror. And, you know, he had his wife who he loved and he only had the daughter. And so when his wife passed, he said, okay, maybe this dream is not real. This is not something that's going to really happen to me. And it really fractured the relationship with his daughter, Rhaenyra. And so he's trying to do the right thing. So he named her the heir. And now he's having all these second thoughts because now he has the son. He didn't expect to get remarried. He didn't expect to have a son. And now it's throwing his whole world kind of upside down with the decision-making that he's already done and just kind of showing that this guy is, I mean, I was a little sympathetic towards him, even though he's an idiot. Just because you see it's really messing with him and he's making the wrong decisions, but like I get it a little bit, I don't know, but I liked that scene between the two of them there at the bonfire.
Yeah, that was a really cool scene. I like that one too. And especially just with like the big fire behind them, like that's their whole thing. Like that was really cool.
I don't hate on him as much as you like. He does some stuff that pisses me off, but like he's been in some really tough spots, this season, I mean, in the series so far, like, and it just shows like kind of the ambiguity of like, it's not black and white. Like these are tough choices. Like everyone was on him to name an heir. The last episode, at that point, in the first episode, he no longer had we'll wait till I have a son. He names his daughter the heir because everyone was on him to name an heir. He didn't know, after all these other circumstances, now he has a son. What's he supposed to do? Like, couldn't you make the argument he's not a person of his word if he takes this away from her and he gives it to his son? Like, he kind of is in some no-win situations, really.
The quote that I found funny about this too is when Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King, was talking to Alicent, and he's basically just trying to tell her to tell the king, like, you're making our son the heir, and he goes, the road ahead is uncertain, but the end is clear. You must guide Viserys to reason. He'll never find it on his own. So, like, he's a fucking idiot. You gotta just manipulate his ass. You gotta just tell him.
I agree with you, Brad, too. He's in some tough moments for sure.
For sure.
And he does have moments where you're like, okay, I kind of like him. Like when he, says he just wants his daughter to be happy. And he's like, fine, like go pick your own husband.
Yeah.
After all of this fighting, it's kind of like, oh, now you're kind of making me like you again.
We actually had a great comment on one of our YouTube videos when talking about Viserys. Someone said that Viserys is a good man, but he's not a good king. And so I think to your guys' point, we're really seeing like, obviously it's really easy in a world like this. And especially when we see kings or people that have a lot of power or have a lot of respect, we almost put them on this pedestal that they're beyond human. And especially in this world, the Targaryens are almost godlike because of their ability to ride dragons and because of the power that they have. But seeing the human side of him and seeing him make mistakes, I think is obviously very relatable and something that we, as people that maybe don't have that stature and never will, you always want the person in power to do the best thing, right? You always hope that they will. Your life and your well-being is in their hands. But it's interesting seeing all the power at play and like, him even having these internal battles, not even just battles of what's right and what's wrong and all these things that's going to happen. I think we can all relate to that. We've all done stuff that maybe we shouldn't have looking back on, but that's life. So it's definitely going to be really interesting to see that all unfold.
Yeah, you definitely see how much of a need there is for PR, even in fantasy medieval times, of having people come in and clean up your messes.
So hey Targaryens, if you guys need a PR person, I think I know somebody. I have your people reach out to my people. And speaking of people and my people and our people, we are so very lucky because we have the Mr. Brad G. Fay with us for Director's Notes with Brad G. Fay. And if you guys are not familiar, if you are not loyal listeners yet, I'm sure you will be after this podcast, you can go ahead and check out Geek and You Shall Find, the documentary, which really is what started all of this and why you are listening to us today. You can find it on Amazon Prime, as well as iTunes and a lot of other streaming services, including Plex, for free. And without further ado, was there any insights that you had into episode 3, the second of his name?
I did have some insight. There was actually a lot of like, motifs kind of playing out throughout this episode. And, I know you guys said a little bit earlier, sometimes it might be a little bit, heavy handed at times. I think we were talking about before the podcast. Some of you guys said like sometimes the symbology is a little, heavy handed, but for me, I just love this stuff. So I guess I give it more of a pass, but I wanted to kind of talk about the significance of the white hart or the stag in this episode. And I wanted to start talking. Rhaenyra continues to play the game perfectly. I think she plays the game better than anyone we've seen. And I'm going to talk about how that kind of maybe ties into that scene where she lets the white hart kind of go. But, again, she always comes out the clear-cut winner in every situation. She started the episode. She doesn't want to get wed. She doesn't want an arranged marriage. And come the end of the episode, she's not having to do that anymore. So how much of this is all manipulative? But say what you want about her, she's very good at getting her way. There was questions at the beginning of the episode. whether or not she's going to be the heir. Is that going to be taken away from her? She ends the episode getting another guarantee that she's going to be the heir and nothing has changed. So the reason I think that ties into the White Hart is we see this theme in mythology, fairy tales, all kinds of fiction of kind of and it starts with Celtic mythology, which we talked about being a big influence for Game of Thrones. In Celtic mythology, white stags are kind of messengers between our world and like the other world, or like a fantasy world. So that's why we see a lot, like in Harry Potter, he has and sorry, I'm not a big Harry Potter person, but I know people on here are, so correct me, but his Patronus is a stag, and it kind of helps guide Harry at times. Like when he gets like the Sword of Gryffindor is because he follows his deer light Patronus guy, and that kind of helps him. So
sorry.
Yeah.
So his dad's Patronus was a stag. And so his Patronus in honor of his dad is also a stag. His mom's Patronus was a doe. And in honor of his mom, Professor Snape, who was always in love with his mom, took on a doe as his Patronus too. And so to get the sword, Professor Snape was guiding him with the doe Patronus. Sorry, back to you.
No. So yeah,
I know.
I knew I remembered, like, in the movies, Harry Potter kind of following this like Patronus to get like answers. And I'm like, okay, that's like, a time motif. But I also think there were a kind of historical connection to that too in this episode, because George R. R. Martin, obviously big history buff, who has talked about Richard II being a historical figure who had a lot of influences on King Joffrey. And I think we see kind of that here, because there's a lot of that in real medieval time of symbols on the day you were born. And for Richard II, who we talked about being a big influence on George R. R. Martin, he was born on the Epiphany, which is a big religious holiday, kind of comes right after Christmas. And he was born on this day, so was constantly being told by nobles and kings, oh, you have a connection to the divinity because you were born on this special day. So he grew up with like an extra air of importance of, oh, I'm godlike because I was born on this day. So wrapping this all together, I think what we see happen is the king kind of breathing a sigh of relief when he sees that they didn't get the White Hart, that it's a brown stag instead, and saying, okay, I no longer have to go with, oh, what a sign it is that it was a white stag that happened to be seen the day of my son's birthday. Now I have to appoint him as the heir. So I think he's kind of breathing a little bit of sigh of relief that this isn't some divine message that was sent from beyond. And I think that ties into the end of the episode when Rhaenyra sees a white stag and is like, let's not maybe kill him and show that there really was this white stag. Like, let's let him run off and kind of hope to never be seen again, because we don't want this to be traced back that there really was a white stag on my brother's birthday and that maybe there is some other sign. So that's why I think, again, she's playing, every move she makes is the right move in every situation. So I think it was the right call, being like, yeah, let's let that stag kind of go do his thing. And, again, wanted to just mention one more time, there are a couple of other mythological references to the stag. Princess Mononoke is very, an anime film that does the whole like follow the deer for spiritual insight and things like that. But the biggest example I found was George R. R. Martin has said the biggest influence on him was The Accursed Kings, which is kind of a book based a little bit on the idea of different, the House Stark and House Lannister and all these families like at battle. But I guess in that book, from my limited research, does a lot about the deer being followed. And as George R. R. Martin said, that was the biggest influence on him. I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that we see in Fire and Blood about deers and the idea of following deers being linked to divinity.
That is definitely very interesting. And it just goes to show just how many influences that these authors and that even these showrunners pull from. So that's actually really great insight. I have to disagree with you why Princess Rhaenyra lets the stag go. I don't think it's because she didn't want it as a symbol for her brother. I think it's because she saw it as a symbol for herself. And she like connected with that in a way that is almost like why King Viserys is happy that he didn't see it, because it's like, since the Targaryens, I mean, they've said this over and over again. That's something that's really bothered me in House of the Dragon, is just how much they're just so heavy-handed with this stuff, and they just really kind of spoon feed stuff to the audience, which we're not used to in Game of Thrones. But with that, like, I think, it's like a moment of clarity for both of them of being like, hey, like, I'm the rightful heir, because Targaryens are so into prophecies, or so into symbols, and like that's really been driven home. So I disagree with you on that. But I mean, I'm very happy that it wasn't killed. And that was my cringe moment. That was my cringe moment of this episode. I thought it was so corny. I thought
that's
it was really
funny, because like I agree, like that's like really good insight to point out, like maybe the whole point of her seeing the stag at the end was it's her that's really the destined one and all that stuff. So
that's how I took it too.
Less cringe for you if the deer would have whispered, "It's you," and then
I think
dust and went up in the sky. Would that have been like a little bit less cringy for you?
I think I would have preferred it to just go full Bambi and just have like, some singing skunks and, little flowers and stuff and talking animals. I think that would have been great. Yeah, actually. All right. So does anyone have anything that we didn't quite talk about that you guys would like to get off your chest before we get into predictions and where we think we're going to go from here?
I got a couple. Yeah.
Noah's been waiting. He's been biding his time. I love it.
This has nothing to do with Harry Potter, I promise you guys. So the first thing that I thought in basically this entire episode is when he's talking about this hunt and going to the Kingswood, and I'm like, we've seen this before. And when the king is getting all hammered, I'm like, we have seen this before.
Oh yeah.
So obviously Viserys ended up unscathed, but it reminded me so much of Robert's hunting for the boar, which ultimately gouged him and killed him, and then that kicks off really all the events of Game of Thrones. So that was interesting there. Second note, Otto Hightower proposes to the king for Rhaenyra to marry Aegon, which is messed up because A, it's her brother, and B,
half brother,
because it's a baby. It's okay, it's a brother and it's a baby.
2 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, come on.
But they said at 2 years old, he's old enough to be named an heir. Like that's the age. He's coming of age to be an heir.
Sure, okay, but it's her brother and he's 2. So anyway, that was messed up. And then lastly, so the actor who plays Otto Hightower, his name is Rhys Ifans. I don't know how to pronounce that. Rhys Ifans. Reese's Pieces, sure. He also plays Kurt Connors, aka the Lizard, in The Amazing Spider-Man. He plays Xenophilius Lovegood in Harry Potter, so I lied. This is about Harry Potter.
I knew it.
Couldn't stay away. And then he also plays the kicker from The Replacements, the football movie with Keanu Reeves. So there you go. That's where you have seen this actor before. And those three kind of all either comedic or weird roles, and I just think he's awesome in this. So obviously that actor has a lot of range, which is just kind of funny to me. I would never have expected that to be the same person. So there you go. That's all I got.
Oh, that is so funny about The Replacements. Oh my God, I had no idea that was him.
Yeah.
Well, it was definitely gaining a lot of notoriety, who pointed that out in the episode of Alicent being the young versions of
that was me as well.
Mr. Noah, all right, we're gonna have to get on the Twitter train with this before everyone else points that out, because that was really a huge popularity thing of everyone pointing that out. So kudos to you being able to put that here first. You guys heard it here first.
I had one scene that I wanted to give it a very quick moment, but I love the opening scene when the Velaryon knight is talking his shit and he's like, getting toward like,
yeah, me too.
A little bit like first he was like, your mom's a whore, and he's like, oh, stop. And then,
I'm kidding, please, no.
Your dad's an idiot too, and I'm like, dude, pick a side, like either bad. Like, but what I really liked in his moment was, when Prince Daemon arrives and he's like, hell yeah, like the prince is here to help me and blah blah blah. And like I talked about, I forget if it was the last episode or the episode before, like I want to see more of like, I know George R. Martin loves that real world tie-in of like, when you've got dragons on your side, like nothing else matters. That gives you such a heads up in battle, and it's kind of a parallel to aerial warfare during World War II. Like once people got planes involved, like that was the end. And we see that theme a lot of infantry and boots on the ground, kind of being the first to get taken out. So I just love that little nod to that when he's like, yeah, the prince is here, help me, and blah blah, and then he just gets stepped on. It's just like a nice reminder of like, these kings and commanders don't give a damn about you on the ground. Like, they're living life up there. So I just really like that moment. I was like, okay, we're kind of back to dragons just not giving a damn about anybody.
Brad is like, I love this game, or I love the show as long as someone's getting squished. All right. If there's no puppets, someone better get squished.
I do believe that was the first time ever we saw Death by Dragonfoot. I did think that right away. I was like, oh, I don't know if we've ever seen anyone stepped on by a dragon before. So I did note that as it happened.
First of its kind. Any insights that you would like to get off your chest, Kate?
The only thing that I had is there was a tweet going around before that this episode was ranked 9.9 on IMDb.
Oh, yes.
Out of 10.
Out of 10, along with which is basically ranked with Battle of the Bastards and Winds of Winter. And I did not think that, maybe that was a fake tweet, but it was given to me beforehand. So I was like really hype about this episode. It was not a 9.9.
No.
What is it rank now? Do we know?
We'll see tomorrow. We'll check it tomorrow.
We'll see tomorrow.
Noah mentioned that showrunner. Noah said in his notes last week that showrunner was leaving the show. Do you think maybe he dedicated his life to starting accounts and giving himself high ratings on specific episodes?
I love that. I love that call for him if he did.
Was this his last episode?
He left the show. Well, he left the show, so maybe it was just to pursue his life as like a spam bot to leave positive reviews on things he did.
That's a very realistic thing, Brad. Thank you for bringing that to the table. He just has millions of things. I know. I was wondering how it was ranked 9.9 before the show even came out. So one last insight that I had before we see where we're going, or this actually kind of ties into predictions and where we think things are going. So this is cheating a little bit, but I did watch after the episode, and they're really talking about how this is an episode that is really a rebirth, especially for the Targaryens that we're following. So for King Viserys, when he's really, going back and forth on if he made the right decision, and I think he comes out feeling a lot better. For Princess Rhaenyra, just feeling really lost and feeling like she's a pawn, like you guys said, and she's coming out being like, no, hell yeah, I'm gonna gain the respect. And I really like that part too, where she comes back and she's covered in blood, and they're bringing the boar back. I think that gained a lot of respect, because a few scenes before then, they're talking about like, okay, but even if she is there, no one's going to give a shit. No one's going to actually say that she's like, the protector of the realm, or like actually think that they can do anything and like she has any strength. So I think she's just really building these little pieces. And then also for Daemon, like he really, he was one of our LVPs, especially in the first episode, and he's really proven himself. And I think this is really going to gain him a lot of respect, not just with viewers, but everyone who was there and in the realm. So definitely like a rebirth episode, which I think is going to have a lot of consequences, good and bad, following. But for you guys, where do you see this going? Is there anything we haven't seen? We've seen hints at incest. We've seen people want to do some incest, but not quite yet. And that is definitely still in my prediction book.
Yeah, I mean, I think that based on the scenes from the next kind of thing, it seems like everyone's coming back together. Daemon's making his way back to King's Landing, and it leads to a kind of, 3 people now that have a claim for being the successor and being the heir, and really kind of being a 3-way battle almost of Rhaenyra versus Daemon versus the baby Aegon II, who knows, he'll be 21 when we come into next episode, maybe, who knows. So just kind of seeing these factions and really fleshing out which houses, who declares for who, and really seeing the seeds planted for, again, the civil war that is obviously coming later on in the series, just seeing kind of how this is starting to take place.
I don't have a prediction, but I do have a one to watch. I would keep my eyes on, Noah has mentioned him a couple of times, Lionel Strong. I really think he's one of those characters. He's not getting like a ton of screen time, but he's definitely in the King's ear a lot. He's definitely making a lot of suggestions. We'll see how, how close those come into fruition. But again, George R. Martin's a big history guy, and I really think he sees the value in his characters knowing history. I don't think it took away, everyone could say what they want about Bran becoming king, and yeah, maybe that didn't play right out in the show, but I definitely think the reason he became king is because a good king knows history and knows real history and has that knowledge. And we see how much that helps Tyrion throughout the course of Game of Thrones is, yeah, he's not, physically strong like Jaime, but he's smart and he knows history. So I kind of see like Lionel Strong kind of playing that role. And I definitely see him as second in line to become the Hand if we have an unexpected death, which we know happens on Game of Thrones so far, so
Yeah, good
I
point.
wouldn't be surprised if some random character gets killed that we're like, oh, damn, I didn't see like Hightower getting like knocked out episode 4 or 5. So I kind of got my eye on him to see what they do with his character. I'd be really interested in seeing.
Cool.
I agree with all that. I don't really have any specific predictions, but I'm just excited to see kind of what they do with Daemon, like where his character goes. Just because he started out so questionable for us and definitely like kind of a villain character, but like not really doing it very well. And now we're like, dang, like he's kind of a badass. So just seeing where he goes. And then I just love watching Rhaenyra. She's my favorite. I just want everything good for her. So
I'm sure that'll come to fruition.
this is probably not the show to watch.
Yeah, Aegon the Conqueror is definitely not gonna play in the part of anything in her future. But yeah, so in my heart of hearts, I obviously, we see that King Viserys is telling Rhaenyra, which also might be a ploy too, because Queen Alicent is in his ear saying like, you need to make this seem like it's her idea to get married off. So then that way maybe you can have Aegon as your heir and it's not going to be as crazy. But in my heart of hearts, I really want her and Sir Kristen to get together. And
oh my God, yes.
I'm so worried about him every episode. I think he's going to die. So I don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately.
I hope not.
But for all you hopeful romantics out there, don't you worry, we're going to be back with another episode. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today. And a special thank you to our international listeners. We see you guys. We are appreciative of you guys. Every single person who's reached out to us about this podcast, every single listen, every single comment, every single share. We just appreciate you guys so much and are so glad that we can share our love of these fandoms with you. We couldn't do this without you. And with that, please make sure to tune in as we continue to follow along with House of the Dragon, as well as Lord of the Rings of Power in our next few episodes. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, you can stream us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, a lot of different streaming services. And of course, please make sure to follow us, comment, like, share, and we will see you right here next time for Geeking You Shall Find, the podcast.
Bye.